In the first reading today, we hear from the prophet Hosea, one of the most important little passages regarding the spiritual life. And people often don't understand the working of the Lord in the spiritual life. Oftentimes we think if we're going to pray, it should be exciting, it should be pleasant, it should be fun, it should be filled with consolations. And it's interesting to listen to people who maybe start out with some of that because God knows just how weak we are, and that if we don't have lots of consolations and fun and excitement, that we would quit. So like a good parent, he gives us all kinds of nice stuff to, bribe us with dessert, basically. It's like, all right, if you eat your broccoli, you'll get some dessert, whatever. And he knows that. Well, eventually it comes to the point where you don't have to be bribing anybody anymore. Just eat what's put in front of you. And so he starts taking all of that away. And then we think we're doing something wrong because I don't feel God anymore. And he's not there, and I'm not hearing him, and I'm not there's no consolation, and it's painful, and it's difficult, and it's dry, and it's dark. That's normal. That's what's supposed to happen. Now, there are things we can do to make that happen that aren't good, but assuming that you're keeping yourself in the state of grace and that you're striving for union with God, that is completely normal. And it's necessary, and the reason it's necessary is, remember, the very purpose of the spiritual life is to love God. Now, most of us, at least at the beginning, it's not about God. It's about me. I want to go to prayer because of what I can get. We're not there for what we can get. We're supposed to be at prayer for what we give. And yes, we will receive an abundance from God. He is there for us. We are supposed to be there for him. And so as the spiritual life develops, then there are things that are going to happen. Part of it is that God will take away a lot of your friends. Pretty much all of them. And leave you just with himself. And at first, that's such a painful thing. And after a little while, you come to just really love it. You're just with the Lord. Then, after a while, he starts bringing the people back in, and pretty soon you're praying that, no, please don't bring the people back, because I just like being here with the Lord. No, he's going to say, no. You need to practice charity. It's not that the people are there because of what you can get. It's the people are there for you to love. And so what you're gaining in prayer, you now have to spend on the people. And then there are times in prayer which can go for years where it's a desert. There is nothing from our perspective. It is dark, it is dry, it is painful. And that is God purifying our love. He has to purify the faith, and he has to purify the hope, but ultimately he's purifying the charity. And so again, even when we get to the point where we're going to prayer because we love the Lord, there's still that selfishness that's there. And we still are looking for something. That's why he leads us out into the desert. When you look in the Old Testament and the people had to go out into the desert, that's the time that the prophets call the honeymoon period for Israel, because they had to draw close to the Lord. They had to trust him. They had to rely on him. They had to be united with him. That's what that desert experience does. Now, it's easy for people to walk away from that because it's not fun and it's not exciting. So you look at that and you say, okay, if I'm there to love God and it doesn't feel good, remember, prayer is not about feelings. most of the time, you just thinking about that, if it feels really good, the prayer really wasn't very good. And if it doesn't feel very good, then that's when the prayer was probably the best. Kind of contrary to what we naturally would think. But God takes all the feelings away so that we're focused simply on loving Him. And if we get frustrated and it's so dry and dark and painful, the frustration shows us where our selfishness is, because it doesn't feel good for me. Now, at the early parts of the spiritual life, that might last a day, and then it's 2 days, and then it's 3 days, and then it's a week, and then it's a couple of weeks, and then it's a month, and a few months. And depending on what God is asking of you and just how far advanced He wants you to be, it can go on for a long, long time. Mother Teresa of Calcutta was 50 years in darkness. 50. Now again, you look at that and say, well, she must have been doing something wrong. God must have been really upset with her that He wasn't giving her all kinds of consolation. I think we know better than that. God is asking her to love. And that's exactly what she spent her life doing. She was, from what she could feel, she was getting nothing. It is pure charity. She was giving. And of course, she's receiving in abundance. She just doesn't feel it. And you can look at some of the other saints and you'll see the same pattern. So if you're going to prayer and you're spending the time and it's dry and it's dark and there's nothing happening, that's actually when the most is happening. And it doesn't mean you're doing something wrong, and it doesn't mean that there's something amiss, unless you're aware of something that you're doing, committing a sin, or maybe you're really, really tired because you didn't get sleep or whatever. Yeah, there are reasons on the natural level. You're sick, you're fatigued, whatever. Sure, that can happen. And your prayer can be dry because of that. But if everything is normal and the prayer is dry, that's a good sign, not a bad one. And so don't panic if that happens. Don't get frustrated. God is leading you out into the desert. He is speaking to your heart in silence. He is forming you. He is uniting you to Himself. He is alluring you into the desert so that He can love you and you can love Him. That's the nature of the spiritual life. So understand that, and don't worry if that's what's happening to you. Don't assume you're doing something wrong, because it actually is a sign that you're doing something right. It wouldn't be happening if you weren't striving to love God. So it's a great blessing. Doesn't feel like it, but it's not about the feelings. So just keep the focus where it belongs. Then, just like what we read in the gospel, just when it feels like you're totally dead, there's nothing there, then God reaches out and raises you up. And then everything is united. When there's no more selfishness, then He can fill you to the fullness, because it's not about you, it's about Him. Just as we started, so we end. We're there for Him. He's there for us. He will take care of everything. He will make sure that He's providing what we need. We just need to learn to keep our focus on Him and strive with everything in our being to be able to love Him in a totally selfless way. That's when that resurrection, even in this life, can happen. That's what we see in the lives of the saints. That's what we see in the writings of the saints. That's what can happen for us as well. But it's all about the perseverance in prayer. So no matter how dark or difficult or painful it gets, don't give up, ever. It's the most important thing in your life, is your relationship with God and your prayer life. So the fact it doesn't feel good, don't worry about that. Just remember why you're there. No matter what it feels like, we are there to love the Lord.